Last month, University of Southern Indiana's Board of Trustees announced a unanimous vote to move to Division I athletics. We'll check in with local experts about what significant impacts USI's move to Division I athletics could have. That's coming up next on WNIN Newsmakers. Thanks for joining us. I'm Amy Mangold. Today we've invited some of USI's top leadership to speak about USI's move to Division I athletics and what that could mean for both USI and our greater community. Our first guests are USI President Ronald Rochon and USI Athletic Director John Mark Hall. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Well, first let's start off with just explain what a move to Division I athletics actually is and entails.
Well, primarily what it means, we're switching from a membership from Division II. We've been with the GOVC since 1979.
Wow.
It's been an exciting ride, being a part of that conference. Division I really offers us an opportunity to really compete at another level. We as an institution have Division I student athletes without question. We have Division I faculty, Division I staff that have been working so many years to build this institution for this opportunity, and we're excited about it.
So what does it mean to be kind of the big fish in a small pond? Because you've been a powerhouse, right? And then moving more toward the Division I, a little larger pond. What does that mean for the athletics program as a whole?
Well, I think, with regard to notoriety, just giving us a bigger DNA footprint, if you will, much more exposure. I think that if you really think about how students respond to athletics, this kind of holistic experience with regard to their collegiate route throughout the 4 years, I think it's going to mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people on and off campus.
So whenever it comes to athletics, what does a move to Division I mean in terms of gains? What do the athletics programs gain from moving to D1?
Well, I think the first thing is our student athletes and coaches will be able to compete at the highest level. And again, as a competitor, whether you're a coach or student athlete, you want to compete against the best. And so that's what we'll be doing in the future. The transition will be difficult at times, and we need people to be patient because we're not going to be the best Division I institution in athletics right away. But our goal is to compete for championships when that opportunity comes. I think our coaches and student athletes are excited about the opportunity to play against the best and the brightest.
So you mentioned this transition takes time, and the athletes probably need to transition in some way as well. What does this, if I'm a student athlete, what does this change mean? Both if I'm in the program now, am I going to have to prepare differently? Am I going to have to do things differently? And for people that are looking, high schoolers that are looking at the program, is this a change for them as well as they start to make their decisions?
Yeah, I think on a day-to-day basis, you'll see a lot of the same things. Like as President Rochon referred to, we have student athletes perform, we believe, at a Division I level. We've just been competing for championships at the Division II level. So I think their daily preparation, they wake up in the morning, they're going to class, they do some strength training, they have practice, that type of routine will continue again. But I think there'll be some little things along the way. Again, I think the one thing I just mentioned, strength conditioning. I think we'll have to kind of ramp that up a little bit, right, to compete at the Division I level. But I think our student athletes will make an adjustment. I think it won't be quite as difficult as many would think it would be.
From the athlete's perspective, are there different requirements, or is it just, are there different standards in terms of athletes for Division I as opposed to Division II, or does that not come into play?
Well, I'll mention one thing, I'll hand it off to President Rochon, but I think that from an academic side standpoint, it's generally speaking the same. Again, our student athletes compete academically at the highest level. Retention rates are strong, graduation rates are strong, so that won't be much of a change. The time limits and requirements they have won't be much of a change from Division I to Division II. So we've tried to put our student athletes at ease a little bit because I think the first thing they think of is, am I going to miss a lot more class? Is this going to put they're students first. We say that all the time, and so we've tried to put them at ease that's not going to change, and that won't change. That's who we are and what we're about.
And I would also just add that one of the most important components with regard to the student first piece is that the faculty and the staff are they're just so engaged with regard to student success. You know, they are asking key questions about advising. They're asking key questions, you know, about time away, asking key questions about what other ways can we support these student athletes, you know. So I'm excited about how the community is responding to the student, you know, making sure that their experience is full, is rich, and also is very much supported with regard to how they matriculate successfully. One other point that I'll make, that I mentioned, is a brag point, is if you look at our fact book, you're gonna find out that our student athletes they're retained at a stronger rate, their GPAs are extremely high. These students are so disciplined. And, you know, that's the piece. And when you get into their lives, and you see all the work they put in with regard to their craft, both on and off the field, and then in the classroom as well, this is their livelihood. These are some amazing human beings that are just extremely disciplined and honed in on being successful.
So it's not just about athletics, right? It is still about the academic experience, knowing that many of these athletes, as great as they are, might not go on to more professional roles in terms of athletics. They need that academic foundation as well, and you're still keeping the focus on that.
Without
as well,
question.
right?
Listen, USI was founded as an academic institution. USI will always remain that. That is our wheelhouse. That's our focal point across the entire university. You know, we want students to come there, receive that degree. I want them to walk across that stage. I want families to shed tears of joy. You know, and oh, by the way, we understand the significance of athletic participation. Students, you know, we had a student this week, you know, who just ran the 5,000 and 3,000 meters as a national championship in Division II. I mean, think about this. His name is Titus Winders. This young man is phenomenal. But you know, you see what he's done academically as well, and you're as, if not prouder, you know, because of those kinds of achievements as well.
Wow. Well, there's no secret there's already a Division I school in town. So are there things that you can learn from the process that the University of Evansville both went through and are continuing to go through to spin up and also maintain the Division I level of athletics?
Yeah, I think you can always learn from peers, colleagues, friends of ours, collaboration, you know, people we collaborate with, you know, often. So I don't think there's any doubt you can learn. But you know, the UV went through the transition from Division II to Division I, you know, quite a few years ago. So, you know, we weren't here then. We couldn't see that process. So we'll lean on other institutions that have just been through that process: Southern Illinois, Edwardsville, Northern Kentucky, Bellarmine out of Louisville, and talk to those institutions and those folks there about, you know, what did you learn through the process? Because it is a transition. It is, you know, as much as we're talking about, we're trying to keep it the same. There are some things that are different, and we want to make sure we understand what those are.
You know, one of the things that both John Mark and I have done, we talked to other presidents and also other ADs, you know, across the country, just trying to get a sense of, you know, all the things that went right for them. And also, oh, by the way, what did we not ask?
Right, yeah.
And so, you know, I'm very thankful, you know, for those colleagues, and I do mean across the country, that have been accessible and also extremely transparent with regard to their experiences. That has been extremely rich for us.
Well, I think I've read that it'll take about 4 years. Is that correct? So, walk us through the process on why it takes so long and what what has to happen in terms of doing this over 4 years.
Yeah. So I think the thing that people see in the newspapers and see online and on the news is that you can't compete for NCAA championships until you go through the 4-year process. So the good news is we're joining the Ohio Valley Conference, and we can compete for those championships during the transitional process. So our student athletes will still have postseason opportunities, a chance to win championships. They just can't make the NCAA tournament. They can't play, our men and women can't play in March Madness, as we're seeing on TV now, until the end of the 4 years. You know, we hope, and we'll be talking a lot to folks in high places about this. We hope that time period will be shortened because we believe it's a little excessive, but it was put in place for, I'm sure, good reasons at the time many years ago. We hope they'll reevaluate that. But so we'll work with the NCAA every year. We'll have benchmarks, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and we'll have to hit those benchmarks to make sure that we're doing everything compliant, we're doing everything that Division I would want us to do, and we'll be a full-fledged member, you know, after that 4-year process.
You know, may I add one other thing, please? You know, so as you asked that question about the 4-year, you know, transition, I should mention to you also that we've had, you know, some concern within the community as well, especially on campus.
Right.
You know, some colleagues who have been less excited, you know, about us transitioning. One of the things that we did, and I'm so proud of this, that I had John Mark Hall and also Dr. Nick LaRoe, someone you'll meet a little bit later, actually, you know, chair a committee called the Exploratory Committee for USI. And these folks did amazing work looking at all the different benchmarks and metrics, for USI, indicating whether or not we were ready, And so I'm just really proud of the work that we've done. But one of the things we did also is we conducted a survey for our community. And I would tell you that overwhelmingly, faculty and staff had a very strong concern. But we had this open-ended response with regard to what would that be, and overwhelmingly, again, about finances. And so we've done a lot of work modeling with our CFO, trying to be very responsive to that particular concern. And I'm really proud of where we are with that as well.
So let's talk a little bit about that. We've talked about what the transition means for the athletes, but what does this transition mean for the greater student population in terms of the school itself, their finances, any costs that they will incur in order to go through the transition?
I'll let John Mark talk about the cost for students. We have a student fee, but one of the things that I've done is I've spoken, I was with SGA last week, Student Government Association, just last week, speaking to them about partnering with John Mark's office, for example, finding ways in which we can really increase that attendance. We need them to come out. We want them to partner with all the offices across the university. Students are the driving force. They are the lifeblood. They are the reason we come to work every day. They're the reason the lights are on at the university. So we're really working hard to make sure that they have the best experience across all aspects of their experiences at USI. So, but John Mark, you want to talk about the
Yes,
fee?
so the fee, we'll have a student athletic fee that'll be on students' bills every semester. And we have that kind of, as this 4-year transition goes, we've kind of tiered it in that way. So the students that are there now will pay less of a fee as they move along because they weren't aware that the fee was going to be there. And then by the time the 4-year process, and we'll be obviously telling prospective students of that fee. And that'll help us, fund what we need to do in athletics. And I think piggybacking a little bit on what Dr. Rochon said, we hope that the students, the general student body, will see athletics as a rallying point. Events that they can go to, a reason to keep them on campus on the weekends,
right,
and those type of things. And I think many of us, including myself, had this great experience of going to games. When I was in college, and that was part of the social aspect, was part of my maturation process as a student, and so we really hope that our students will rally around this, and I think they will. They're excited about it.
Well, Dr. Ronald Rochon, John Mark Hall, thank you so much for
man.
your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Best of luck with the process. We appreciate
Thank you
all
so
the
much.
information.
Come to a game.
I will.
Okay, all right.
Now we're joined by USI's Board of Trustees Vice Chair Christine Keck to discuss the economic impact the move to Division I athletics could have on the university's community as well as our own. Thank you so much for being with us,
Hi,
Christine.
Amy. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Well, tell us more about the financial impacts to the university as a whole. We've
Yeah.
just discussed the financial impacts to students.
Yep.
So describe it for the university as a whole.
Sure. Well, absolutely. Well, we're super excited about this move. First of all, I would be remiss if I didn't say that. But yeah, we're looking to a lot of potential positive financial impacts to the university. Certainly when we go to D1, that's going to mean, new games, new venues, potentially boosted enrollment, boosted just interest and participation in USI, in all our sports and activities. So I think we're really hopeful about this being a catalyst for a lot of growth for the university, a lot of further success for the university, and I would also say also for our region. I mean, not just for USI, for our students and our staff, but quite frankly for our community and our region. We see this as a tremendous boost, a tremendous catalyst for the economic and financial success of the school, our community, and our region.
So there's been a lot of discussion about the cost.
Yep.
So outline a little bit about the cost to the university.
Right.
We've talked about the student fees.
Yeah.
Is this going to be covered by student fees only? Are you looking for other funding sources that will assist in covering this cost?
Right, yeah. No, good question, thank you. So yeah, absolutely not at all covered totally by student fees. Student fees are a component, but very importantly, there is a significant component of the funding that will come from philanthropic sources, from the community, from the region, and that's also part of what I think to us is very exciting about this, because that's also engaging the community, our corporate partners, our community stakeholders writ large in this effort. So that funding will come from a variety of sources, and again, that just boosts the engagement with the university and with where we're going.
So you mentioned some financial benefits to this move.
Yeah.
Do you feel that, is there a sense that ultimately, the move to D1, although it has an associated cost as you make the transition, that now these benefits in increased enrollment and increased attendance at games, at either sponsorships or things like that, will begin to cover the cost or to reap and recover some of the costs that you've incurred.
Absolutely, and that's certainly the hope and the expectation. Because if you think about it, I mean, even just look at whether you look at sports events that we have here on the local level and how many sports tourism dollars those bring in, and then the ancillary or tertiary effects of that of more food vendors and additional hotel room nights and all that. So there's a lot of sort of ancillary or tertiary economic benefits that we expect. You look at bigger, high-profile events in our country, the New York Marathon or something like that. I mean, so sports tourism dollars are huge, and we expect to be very impactful to USI and to our community and our region in a very positive way.
And it's a little bit, when we've even talked about Talent 2025, it's a little bit about quality of place as well, right?
Totally, yeah. I'm so glad you asked that question. Yes, and that's something I'm very passionate about. This absolutely aligns with what we're attempting to do as a community and region with quality of place, quality of life initiatives, all tied into Talent 2025, which at its core is also about retention of wonderful employees, attracting new colleagues to the community. So that all of that is hand in hand of what we're doing here. And in fact, that was something that really resonated with me as a trustee when we were making this decision because of my work in Talent 2025 and related activities. And I thought this completely aligns with those initiatives that we're trying to put forward.
We hear a lot about having things to do in Evansville, and this is just this has the potential of raising that bar. I mean, again, USI has been a powerhouse in D2, and with the conferences coming here and things like that, but you feel like this is even going to bring even more to us as well
absolutely.
in terms of more things.
Absolutely. Well, and if anyone has been onto USI lately, I mean, our facilities are phenomenal. And so the stage is set in so many ways, not just with our facilities, but with our staff, our programs, our scholastic excellence. And so now we're adding that level with D1 that will just be sort of the cherry on top, or that truly that catalyst to bring more people, more events, more revenue into the school, attract more students, boost enrollment, raise the profile of the university as well as our community and our region. I mean, all of that is just, we believe, is going to come together to be very positively impactful for the school and for our region.
Well, and with your role involved with EREP and in the business community, what has been, even though the business community you didn't have a formal survey, what's been the sense in the business community and the buzz? Are they excited about this? Do they feel like there are sponsorship opportunities and other economic opportunities for them? Or are you finding some dissension within the regional business area as well?
Amy, I mean, if there is dissension, I have not heard it yet. It's been almost uniformly very positive, very enthusiastic. And again, I go back to what we talked about with Talent 2025 and all the things that we're trying to do as a community and a region to elevate the progress, the momentum, and the prosperity of our region. Well, to me, this goes hand in hand with that. And I have found a lot of the business community really believes the same. Like, what a great additional move for us, again, to up our game, so to speak, not only for USI, but for our community and our region. So far, great support and great interest from the business community.
Well, we've talked a lot about the positives, but every transition has some challenges. So can you talk or even identify maybe some of the potential challenges that you see on the horizon in this transition and how you're kind of hoping to minimize those?
Absolutely. Well, there's several. Certainly, we need to raise money, and we're up to the task, but that's always daunting, right? And there are things going on in the world and in our community that can provide headwinds to that. But we also have a lot of interest and a lot of strong base of philanthropic support already for USI. So we think we can overcome that. But there are also things, logistical things that I don't want to minimize. Like, there's going to be additional compliance requirements. Just additional sort of maybe call them technical requirements that we have to meet. And so that will be a challenge. Now, again, I believe we're up to that challenge, but there are going to be things that are, that are challenging, that are difficulties for us as we make this step forward, as we make this step up. We're up for the challenge, but there will be some difficulties that we encounter. The team has done a fantastic job, I should say, of doing their due diligence to really try to identify in advance what those potential pitfalls and challenges are. So again, I think that we're prepared for it, but there will be things that we face that are tough.
Well, Christine Keck, thank you so much for
Sure.
being here. We appreciate all your information and your
Thank
insight.
you. It was great to talk to you.
Lastly, we're joined by Dr. Nicholas LaRoe, an associate professor of political science at USI, who will be addressing student and faculty concerns about USI's decision. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So I understand a survey was conducted. Can you explain who received the survey and what types of questions were asked?
Sure. Early on in the process of going through the exploratory committee, I was a co-chair on that with John Mark Hall. We were trying to find a good way to get input from the university committee, and so we talked about the possibility of town halls. We thought about doing it during the middle of the semester, but the committee hadn't really kind of arrived at all the factual conclusions, and we didn't know how we could be all those different places. So we decided to do a survey administered internally to the entire community. So faculty were surveyed, administrators were surveyed, support staff, students, and retirees. And it was fairly short and sweet. We just asked them in December, here are the basics about how a transition would work. Given this information, would you be in support? Would you oppose it, or don't you know yet? And then we gave them an opportunity to kind of put their input in the box to say, why they were for or against, or what more they would like to know.
Sure. So what was the response to the survey? Do you feel like you got a really representative sample of your population there?
I think so. I think we sent it out to nearly 10,000 people overall. We got a couple of thousand responses, which is pretty typical for a survey. And it was pretty good. There was a lot of comments, a lot of stuff to sort through, a lot of people voted. So I think people had a chance to give their input, and I think a lot of people did. And I think that was a good part of the process. What
were the overall findings and the themes that came out in the survey? About those?
Sure. Generally, for the kind of the yes/no, I believe it was 39% were in favor and 48% were opposed. And about 12% weren't quite sure, or something like that. And then if you break it down by the different groups, students, faculty, support staff, retirees, it was generally the same pattern. Some were more opposed than others. But that's generally what we got. And as far as, if you want to talk about the open-ended responses, most of the concerns were, particularly for faculty, about kind of resource allocation, as I think was discussed by the president and athletic director, that, one of the things that is a strength for USI is that we're affordable for students. Would that still be the case with the fee increase? When it comes to being competitive in compensation for faculty and staff and resources, would we still be able to do that? And just kind of overall, how much would this cost the university? Was a pretty frequent concern no matter which way you broke down the survey.
Right. So did you find that there are other themes or different themes in terms of what the students were saying and what the faculty were saying and some of the other resource staff?
It was actually remarkably consistent depending on how you broke it down. We gave a presentation to the community in our spring meeting, and I went through each one of the groups, and it was almost exactly the same. Some of the students wondered, well, if I'm somebody who's not interested in athletics, what's in this for me as far as the university experience? But for most people it was, do we have the finances for this, and what does this mean for resource allocation, particularly compensation and other places?
Well, and when you conducted the survey, I know you mentioned you were going through the exploratory process, and some information was pretty limited before, as you were starting to go through that. Kind of looking back, sometimes when people respond to a survey, they might not have enough knowledge to make an educated answer. Do you feel like that might have been a challenge to this survey, and do you feel like now that more information has been shared, the sentiment might be shifting on campus, or do you have a pulse of that right now?
I don't know. I mean, I think we did a pretty good job of outlining it. I'll say, as even the co-chair of the committee, my first time working on a transition to Division I wasn't totally sure. I knew enough to really make a decision. I think, you do the best you can with the facts and move forward. We will find out when the transition makes how some of those kind of facts will work out in practice. But I think, we did as good a job as we could gathering it and gave people as much as we reasonably could be expected to deliver at the time. And that's kind of how those decisions work.
With those kind of results coming from this survey, has there been a sentiment or any response that you're aware of that although the results showed 46 to 48% that weren't sure about the move, whether there was enough due attention given to the results of that survey in making the decision overall?
I think there were a couple of views. So it was made clear from the beginning that this was a decision that was going to be made by the Board of Trustees and the President, and that they would be soliciting input from as many different actors as possible, gathering as many different data points as possible. So from one perspective, it was, this is an additional data point. Let's see what people have to say. Let's see what their concerns are. I think some other folks viewed it as some sort of kind of referendum, as if this was something that was going to be voted on, and that would be decisive. And I think some people who, if they had that perspective, wondered why, well, if there was a vote against, why are they going forward? But the survey was intended to be data collection for the decision makers.
Was there any discussion about surveying the greater community, or was that kind of informally done with other relationships amongst the region about how the community would rally around a move for the athletics program?
Oh, that's a great question. And frankly, it's just kind of outside of what I was involved in. So I imagine some stuff was done. I remember a comment here or there about let's talk to business leaders and local political leaders, and I imagine some folks did that. But as far as my work on the exploratory committee, we kind of just focused on fact finding. So I'm not sure.
Any thoughts about whether now that more information is coming out about this, people are learning more about what this transition is going to mean for them, for students outside of the program, any thought about resurveying the population to see if their attitudes and their opinions have changed, or is this the decision's made, we're moving forward, we're going to bring people along with this?
That's a good question. I think that would be interesting. I don't know if it's been discussed, but it might be interesting to know in 5 years, because I don't think this will be a 1 or 2 year thing where you'll be able to know how it works out. Perhaps we look in 5 years after that 4-year kind of probationary period for competition ends, just to kind of see what people think, because while people are giving their answers to a survey, at the end of the semester based on a couple of factoids, seeing how it plays out when there's competition and there's all sorts of things like that might be another. So I would be interested to see it. I don't know what the results would be, but yeah, I look forward to seeing how it plays out.
It's almost kind of the thought about a pre and a post test. You check people's knowledge and their opinion beforehand, and then as they start to learn more, you see if maybe they've come along in the process. So it might bear itself out.
I think we all know it's one thing to answer a question as a hypothetical. It's another thing for it actually to happen and see what happens. So yeah, I mean, that would be an interesting research project.
Being involved in both the exploratory committee and in this survey, is there any other thing that you would like to say to the community, say to the faculty and the students about or any other issue or question you'd like to address or information you'd like to share to that population?
I would just say come and see. We've got wonderful facilities. We've been very successful at the Division II level. I know working closely with the athletic department, I've enjoyed working with the people, the coaches and the student athletes. Come check out a game. We've got great programs. I think they're going to do well in the Ohio Valley, and come and see for yourself what this looks like. Answer your questions by coming onto campus.
Great. Thank you, Dr. LaRoe. We appreciate your information.
My pleasure.
Thanks to all our guests for joining us. Next week, we'll discuss the State of the City address. Thanks for watching WNIN Newsmakers.